Good evening and welcome to the inaugural Star Sober SME Biz webinar. And today we are going to talk about the post-COVID-19 pandemic crisis and how are we going to overcome it. And we have got very, very special guests, towering personalities, and they are none other than, we have Dato Sri Gary Chua, the President of Malaysia Retail Chain Association. Welcome, Dato Sri. And we have Dato Michael Kang, the energetic and effervescent President of SME Malaysia. Welcome to the show. And last but not least, we have Dato A.T. Kumara Raja, who is the Secretary General of MIKI. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. My name is Bruce Lim, and I will be your moderator this evening. So let's cut straight to the chase. We are already into week number 4. And yes, about Friday on the 10th, there was an announcement by Prime Minister that the movement control order will be extended for another 2 weeks, right up to April the 28th. So this is expected by some people, but for others, it still has even deeper repercussions on the business. And the three of you, Dato Sri Gary, Dato Kang, and Dato ATK, as they call you, you are towering personalities. And I'm sure you are working tirelessly in the background, engaging your members, and engaging the powers that be, the policy makers. And I know that you have been in the forefront as well as in the back end at cabinet committee meetings with senior ministers, the EAC, providing feedback, statistics, justification. SME Malaysia, MRCA, you have been providing a lot of statistics on how it's impacting the business community. Many has borne fruit. We saw the enhanced stimulus package for the SMEs. Can you just give us a glimpse of what is actually taking place in the past 1 month? What's happening behind the scenes? Dato Sri Gary, perhaps you can get the ball rolling.
You can see, in fact, all the associations have been playing very active roles in engaging with the government to make the plights and woes of all the SMEs and retailers, and of course business in general, to the government to feel the pulse of the difficulties and challenges. In fact, when the MCO was started, it was actually something very unprecedented. It was so sudden, and many was caught by surprise. And with no income, and you have to start paying overheads like salaries and rentals and statutories and bank loans. Many have nightmares actually. And in fact, many members and even other business associates have been so worried. In particular, the smaller, medium to the SMEs and also the micro SMEs. But the good thing, the government heard us. And taken very positive measures. The previous recent one, you can see that all the micro SMEs has been taken good care of. And prior to that, the M40, B40, and also the e-hailings, and of course some of the other sectors has been looked after. But one area still has not been actually, some areas I would say have not been been paid attention, especially the mid-tier to the higher tier SMEs, you see. And that is one area, in fact, was one of the most critical because they employ probably the most employees. Many of them are chain retailers and also SMEs who have more than 200, 500, 1,000, and a few thousand workers. So these are in fact very horrendous, challenges they have to go through.
Right.
So of course we have engaged with the government. The good thing, government has heard us, and of course now the new MCO comes in again. We have to really make sure that many sectors have to be allowed to be operating, operated for business, because you see, the whole idea is about distancing. If let's say that particular SOP can be formulated or can be adhered to, I see no reason why it has to be a blanket MCO to everyone, you see. For example, we can put a blanket on, for example, a red zone, but not to those green zones or some other trade species, although it's not 100% essential, but it's still critical, is it?
Right, we hear you, Dato Sri, and I'm just going to hold you on over there. We just like to hear the view of Dato Michael Kang. You know, I've seen you have appeared in multiple interviews, attended several meetings. Is there a strategy behind this meeting in terms of the approach with the policymakers and as well as with your the business community?
There is very clear, you know, where we have working very closely with all the ministry, you know, to how in terms of when the MCO started, you know, we found that there's a lot of hit out, you know, with all the SME were facing big troubles when we proposed it with all the association and meet out, you know, then we proposed to the government that hope the government can come out a smaller package for us. When you see the smaller package 2, when after they announce the smaller package 2, this is almost totally nothing for the SME industry, not even a single you can see, you know, and nothing for that. Is only the increase on the SRF loan and plus the conditional wages subsidy at 600 ringgit. That is the totally make the SME so difficult able to claim. You know, you can see that there's something. Yes, there's something there, but not able for SME really get the assistance from the government to overcome the totally loss of income when the MCO lockdown. That's why then we really work harder, you know, with the other association to meet out and to meet with all the different ministry, including EPU, MOF, you know, Ministry of Human Resource, you know, all this to ask for the extra assistance and even we also send a proposal to the Prime Minister. So we hope that the Prime Ministers can give the instruction down. We call that to save SME, save job, save the country. If we don't save SME, you know, they're going to massive layoff. They're going to all the Malaysian, a lot of people are going to lose a job. You know, we talk about a few millions people. It's a social problem. I think this is a very critical. You know, if the government did not come out any assistance to the business industry, and that's why the government set out the special committee, cabinet special committee, tasked to look into our proposal and discuss with us and come out at the end. They announce the additional similar package for the SME. I think this is good. You know, at least the government listen to give some assistance from the SME. But after the announcement and Friday another round MCO to extended, I think a lot of SME start facing decisions making during this period, whether they are continuing their business or shutting down their business. Because all these measures, we can see that there are a lot of government announced measures, but how to claim, how to get assistance from government, how to get assistance from the bank, everyone have all the SME facing a big question mark. You know, there is no proper guideline, no proper procedure. There is no centralized management. You know, how to draw down this. I think this is a big critical point. Yeah.
Probably because this COVID pandemic has hit everybody very suddenly. And, you know, you can't fault the government. As you just mentioned, they set up the cabinet committee on a Friday. And, you know, the next Monday, they already announced the enhanced stimulus package for SMEs. And I guess it's fair that we allow the government to also take it. But before we get down to the 3 feet kind of decision and discussion, let's just focus back on the economic stimulus package that the 3 of you gentlemen has been championing for. When our Prime Minister Tan Sri Mahyudin announced the the second stimulus package, he called it Prihatin. And one word that stuck out was that no one should be left behind, right? And obviously the SME community said that, hey, there's nothing much for us, but there were some gems there, granted. Dato' ATK, do you find a pattern, because we are living in extraordinary times. So the first thing they want to do is just take care of the B40s and probably take care of the M40s and the Makcik Kias of the world, right? And once that is sort of stabilized, then they say, okay, SMEs, we hear you. Do you think that's the government's strategy, or was that a reactive decision based on the huge upheaval from the SME community? So right now, with the enhanced package for SMEs, are the SMEs still left behind? Is anyone still left behind? Dato' ATK, what are your views?
Bruce, I mean, I would kind of sum it up, right? So if it, like how you said, the whole evolution of this whole stimulus package from the time COVID started somewhere in early January to the time we hit MCO, and now we are in the fourth week. It's like a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that doesn't exist, right? So, even earlier in the discussion with Dr. Michael and Dr. Sri Gary, the Putrajaya's response, like you asked, is it by pattern, in the sense that is it by design, or is it purely by default? So I don't think the government was also caught out in a situation which is like unknown, right? So we don't know how long this is going to last. What's the revised numbers? We were talking about growth rates which was slowing down. So we said, 4.5 was too high, at 4.3%, then we went to 3. Now we're talking about -2. And really, we like literally turn 180 degrees and going behind. But if you see the response of government, they've also basically fighting against time, right? So first they came up and said, okay, let's have the highest level of coverage, which is probably managing the demand side. So the Makcik Kia stimulus package in Prihatin, $250 billion was primarily targeted towards that. I believe that Putrajaya's thought process then was the SMEs will be relatively resilient. But obviously, with a lot of the pushback and a lot of feedback that actually went to Putrajaya, I think never before Putrajaya has had that much of interactions with business association, business chambers, stakeholders, and all, right? In a short span of time. I mean, it happens during budget, but that takes about 3 months. What happens in 3 months happened in 3 days in the last 10 days, right? So I think that response of the extra 10 billion that came on top of the earlier 250 is very much tailored towards, okay, that will be the SME stimulus package. To be fair, I think even the ask that all of us have put, whether it's regards to funding, facilitation, or whether it's wage subsidy or other regulatory changes or subsidies that we wanted to, is primarily very much reactive to the market. Because if we know that we're going to go business next week, then I would be able to plan. But I'm not sure whether I'm going next week, next month, or even the next year. So without that being very definite, I think the response has been fairly commendable. And I think as business associations, we also have to understand that government is also fighting against social, against economic need. You need to put an MCO, but again, I'm bleeding economically. So where is the balance that we need to strike? The other thing I think now, especially in the fourth week, and once all these packages have been announced, I think really now we're not looking at the package anymore, but we're looking at the package being delivered.
Right.
So the implementation is actually the key now. So everything that the earlier discussions we have had, right? So that Dr. Michael had mentioned some numbers in terms of how many number of SME or SRF loans which has been approved. Actually, we look at the number that is like business as usual as far as the banking sector is concerned, right? 2,000 cases over a month and a half, no big deal. That's like business as usual. Is it crisis fund? No. But if you look at the list of banks that you have to approach, it's like 24, if I'm not mistaken, last round which I checked. Right? So that's like a laundry list. Why can't we have one single window of implementation, like how we have Majlis Keselamatan Negara? I think Dr. Michael and I'm sure Dr. Sri Gary Chua has, we must have a single window for implementation for all the crisis packages, regardless of whether it's social packages which are being rolled out or economic stimulus package. Then it is easier to manage, easier to get feedback, and also easier to fine-tune them as and when we move. I think that has to be the right approach.
I hear you, but probably the wisdom is that the banks already have the system. Probably that's the weakness itself, because their system is not catered for this extraordinarily challenging times. But we're going to come back to that. But again, returning to the question about this pre-Hartin stimulus package, no one is left behind. Dato Sri Gary, you just mentioned that the mid-tier companies, the larger companies are still not so-called given enough coverage. Do you think they are left behind?
You see, the intention by the government is definitely very good. The intention is good, but the implementation, the structure of it, the mechanics of it, I think need to be fine-tuned. You see, for example, you see those above 200 workers or staff they have, they only can claim up to maximum 200. You see, but there are so many retailers or SMEs who have a chain of outlets, and also in the factories, or perhaps in other retail or other sort of even wholesale. So these sectors has to be also catered. If let's say there's financial constraint is one thing, but 200, I think the limit, the ceiling is too low. Probably at least we should give at least a 500, 500 for the ceiling, and not 200. I think previously from 100 to 200, I think there's some improvement. But I think it should be at least 500. Because many of them have thousands of staffs, If just with 200, they can't survive on, is it? And then coming back to what you call it, for everyone. Again, other areas of sectors have to play their part. For example, just now Dato' ATK have mentioned about the banks. You see, it's just like business as usual. That shouldn't be the case. I was told Bank Negara is supposed to be monitoring this. Probably someone have to inform Bank Negara so that Bank Negara can do a very stringent monitoring on this area. It cannot be business as usual, because everyone have to sacrifice. The banks, for actually protracting the 6-month moratorium, they're not losing anything. They're still charging interest. That's why I say the bank must at least give 50% of rebates for the interest for that period of time, you see. Furthermore, that 50% is not supposed to make money. It's just to cover your expenses, because now everybody is talking about cash flow and survival, You see, and then the other thing, of course, other areas, the government also have announced the landlord has to come in to help. Because when you talk about for all, you're talking about all sectors of supporting the supply chain, that's connected to business. So landlords, some of them have, like for example, Sunway have kickstarted by giving the 2 weeks. That was during the first MCO. And Mid Valley and Ecocheras and some others have went one step ahead by offering 2 months based on GTO. I think that is such a big relief to many of the retailers in this area, the Mid Valley and Ecocheras. So hopefully all the other malls can follow suit. Now with the extended up to almost end of April, these 2 months should be automatic, so to tie through at least all the retail and all the SMEs will be able to buy through, And then you talk about the statutories. Government is talking about, okay, April or so, middle of April, then you can call up the EPF and all this. I think that is too much awaited. It just should be a blanket 6 months moratorium for all the statutories, from SST, IRB, income tax, to EPF and assessments. You see, we are talking about cash flow, about survival. If these things are not done, can you imagine? Many business will collapse. Based on the SME Association or SME Corporation, the initial survey, they already spell out 48% or so can't even survive for 1 or 2 months, because not many even the big boys, I've spoken to many of them, medium to bigger boys, they also can't survive more than a few months, because they don't keep the kind of cash for standby, because most of the cash will be used for expansion, used for maybe some other investments, and other purposes. So that is something I think is very important. All these sectors have to come in,
Yeah, we hold cash reserves for expansion and all that, as you said. None of us would have ever thought of holding that cash for COVID-19, because this has never happened before, in the history of mankind, probably since the days of the Spanish flu. Dato' Sri Gary mentioned a point, again, back to left behind. I think the idea about up to 75 back to this the wage subsidies, on up to 75 and then 200. I think that is somehow linked to the definition of what counts as an SME, right? Dr. Michael, just a very, very quick one. So why aren't we covering for those who are bigger? Probably things are all moving right now. So you'll go to the bigger companies with another package. It's a move, and ongoing challenge that everyone has to resolve.
I think the government should set out a panic control or the business community. It should not, whatever drawdown to assistance to the business community should be a single window to make decision. Even include like what Dr. Kumar Raja mentioned. Bank, that's why I already proposed to the Bank Negara. We should learn from UK. There is a single window for whatever, during this COVID period. They need cash, to every single one to channels application to the Bank Negara. Let Bank Negara to manage it. Because if you don't do that, when from the bank report, the approval rate is 80 or 90%, but actual is only 5 to 10%. It's totally different, because before their bank approved, they already filter, they already reject, not even accept the application. If Bank Negara could set out a single window to accept all the application, then from there, then you can see how many were rejected. That one is the real figure. That is what we hope that the government can do that. Not only that, even include whatever assistance as a single window, single process center. Every single SME online apply through that. Then the people will able to the government should able to know what is going on, on the ground, to assist SME. That's why from our survey, I was spelled out very clear. I showed it to this EAC and also cabinet about that. SME, 33% already by March already the cash is dry out, and then another 37.8% by April dry out. So equivalent to almost 70%. If this 70% by this end of this month, they still can't able to get any financial assistance from the government or from elsewhere or generate some sales or some business in. I can tell you, I think this 70% easily, I can see 40 to 50% will shut down, and they'll lay off the staff to cut the cost. There are no point by waiting the bank to apply any more SRF, to apply this subsidy. The way I see it, when I talk to a lot of SME, they say now they're on hand the cash already dry up, because yes, some of SME they have reserved for what critical, but the amount is not that big, because this is totally locked down. Like what Dr. Sri Gary said, totally locked down means that you totally can't able to generate any sales in the first place. Second, a lot of SME with the holding all the stock in warehouse cannot sell. They cannot turn cash. During this period, there's no sales, they cannot turn cash. The third, whatever all collection is not able to collect, because every SME facing the cash flow issue. They ask for, even today, Eon also asked right to all the SME to ask them to allow to delay 3 months or 6 month payment. So all these are locked down for SME. Yes, SME they must have a cash on hand, but cash on hand is limited, because the cash all elsewhere, they're not able to immediate to cash in, especially when it comes to this.
Now, we need cash. Cash is king. Cash on hand is there. So I'm going to park that discussion on the macroeconomic perspective and how governments and our policymakers are handling it. It's very clear we have got several cabinet committee for SMEs, cabinet committee, and other committees that are supposed to liaise and engage the banks. We have got an Economic Action Council, and in times of MCO like that, we have got the National Security Council as well. We're going to come back to those 30,000 feet questions later part of this program. But right now, you all talked about survival and how businesses are going to conduct themselves. How are you going to run it? So we are going to go to the perspective of the businesses. You mentioned cash is the lifeline for any sort of business survival. How are the companies right now, in your associations, coping right now during the MCO? So we're going to look at it, say, even from the supply side. You just talked about what are they doing right now in terms of engaging the banks, in terms of the creditors. I'm just going to continue with that conversation, but I'm going to hand it over to Dato' ATK. So if you're a business person right now, what should you be doing given the existing policies?
So,
what are three
that's the thing, right? So we're in unprecedented times, isn't it? So the approach that we must take is some sort of a it's being transparent. When somebody says, look, I cannot pay you, it's not because that's the kind of usual excuse I've been giving you for the last 10 years. No, but actually I cannot pay you simply because there's nothing happening in the last 2 months or 3 months. Business has been bad since last quarter in 2019 onwards. So I think what we need to do, and I think what some of the most successful ones are starting to do, is they're actually already starting to negotiate both to their upline or to their vendors, to their suppliers, to their partners, and says, look, let's everybody decide to take a haircut. Let everybody decides that, okay, look, I'm going to delay payments simply because I'm not getting paid, or I'm not being able to sell, so I cannot really pay you. So understand that I won't be able to pay you for some time, but let's see where is the middle ground. So if we approach that in that way, I think some of the more resilient, more reactive SMEs will be able to at least buy some time before the banking facilities or government facilities, all the stimulus packages kick in. Because if we don't, and we're just literally going to be like, everybody is going to treat this thing is like normal, or look, I don't really care, but you have to pay me. If the landlord says, I'm not really going to give you a discount, but you have to pay up regardless of whether you open shop or not, and that's really not going to work, because somebody is going to say, so what? I'll see you in court. By the time this litigation comes across, only fellows are going to get well off is the lawyers and nobody else, right? So nobody is going to benefit from this downturn if you go that path. So I think what companies have been doing, from what I understand, is already starting to talk to all their stakeholders, regardless of whether it's their vendors, including even their staff, and says, look, I might be able to, let's say April. So do we pay? I think government has also now been a bit more softer. You can start negotiating. I won't say the word right size, but at least start negotiating in terms of a mutual understanding of what's the pay packet. So I start talking to my staff. 35% of my bills are actually payroll, so that's my biggest issue. If I'm not, have I got debtors which I'm not paid? So let's start talking to them. I think would be a more practical approach to do while we wait for cash to come in. That drawdown from the banks. The problem is, Bruce, I think that idea is like, is Bank Negara not listening? I don't think so. But are they reacting fast enough? They're obviously not. They're like literally in isolation of sorts, right?
Okay. So you mentioned three things. Number one is with banks, right? We have got the moratoriums, we have got loans. We're going to come back to that. Number two, engagement with your suppliers. And number three, with the your own staff and employees. So these are the three things that we need to immediately come to. I'm going to pose this question to Dato' Sri Gary. You have led MRCA, and MRCA is always known to be, the voice of retailers. You have got 30,000 outlets within MRCA. So you are one of the largest tenants, occupying the malls. Can you take us through your experience? Is it better to go through one by one, or do you use the association as a so-called collective voice in terms of negotiation?
In business, there's always believe in goodwill, and also the the two-way traffic. Just like as I mentioned earlier, Sunway have kick-started by giving the 2 weeks, and then followed by after that Mid Valley and Ecocheras and some others, just straight away giving 2 months. I think that is very goodwill. You see, that would actually capture a lot of the hearts of the retailers. I'm sure this will have big rewards and big recognition and gratefulness and gratitude by the retailers and the tenants of the malls, the said malls. I understand many of the malls are coming back with their final decision. Also, I heard some very good positive news, because some of them waiting for after the MCO, you see. So the goodwill is very important in this case. No point talking about the voice and then go head on. the best thing is that we work as collectively, because most of us actually have, even MRCA, we have very good relationship with most of the malls in town. Most of the bosses, they know us, and we have a very good relationship. So there's no, I see no avenues to go to that level. And I believe they also will do the right thing for the retail, for the long-term survival, because the malls, they only sacrifice for a few months. After that, the tenants are still there long-term, but if the tenants cannot survive for the next, even the immediate few months, and off they go. And then they have to start looking for new tenants, and that they also will lose tenants and lose revenue during the period of time, you see. So I think it's very important that it has to be a two-way, and very important also not to put fully the responsibility on the malls. TNB, as I mentioned earlier, so must come in to play the active role. TNB at the moment is only giving 15%. I think that is too low. It's peanuts for what they made, and it's supposed to be a public utility, partly CSR company. They should be giving, at least sacrificing $1 billion. So what? Last year they make $4 billion. So at least give a 50% during the MCO time, and then next 6 months, 4 to 6 months, at least 30%. So this also would help the malls to cushion up part of the expenses. I think that is fair. So everybody will come into play, including the banks. Should the malls taking loans, the banks also should give a 50% rebate to the malls and all the landlords. So this is something we have to help each other. It's not just a one-way game or one-person game, is it?
I appreciate what you're doing at MRCA. Great work. We are talking about continuous engagement with your landlords and the mall owners, and even people like TNB. But then again, we are talking about people who occupy in malls. What about commercial properties? What is your view, Dato' Michael? And then even for commercial properties and for non-retailers, TNB is only giving 2%. What's your take on that? Very, very quickly.
I think that this is what we are asking for the government, to get the TNB to give at least 50% discount. I think this is the CSR TNB have to do for that. So many years they have been making profit from here. Against the oil price also, all this have been dropped. We hope that the government can really seriously talk to the TNB and reduce the electricity bill, for this during this period is at least 3 months to 6 months, with the 50% discount for the industry or for commercial. I think this is most important, as this can reduce the burden of the SME. Other than that, commercials, what they mentioned, the rentals, all this. I think on the at least something, as long as government links property, they are willing to give at least 1 month waive on the rentals. I think this is good, but we hope that this can be longer, or at least 2 or 3 months rental free, so that can have some brief for the SME to release their burdens on the cash flow. And this is what Sri Gary mentioned very clearly. We hope that the government can really postpone, or defer the whole statutory payment, especially like EPF. SPF should defer at least 3 months or 6 months, not ask the company go back and negotiate after 14 or 15, go back and negotiate with the EPF, then see whether they're how their financial situation, and only give some solution. How many companies are going to do that? I think this is the really burden for the SME. They are really cracking their head how to survive, and then yet they have to go back to negotiate with the EPF. I think totally, I'm not sure. I feel that government are not ready, don't feel that there is a panicking. They don't feel that there's a crisis for the country economy. I think you can see the way governments manage the COVID-19, the MCO. Like they are moving one step by ahead. Give you a bit and then pull back. Then put some roadblock. Not allow you to pass through. See whether anything is this critical. Then only let go for you to go. I think this is uncertainty for the business. It's very difficult for business to plan ahead. At the end, I think it will make more SME will shut down. Because since they can't see the future, can't see what is a good policy to help the business industry from the government side, then at the end they rather shut down and lay off all the staff, cut the cost zero first, and only see what to do for the next.
Dato' ATK, is there still hope? Because earlier we were all talking about, hey, we want this engagement to continuously take place. So I think that, what is your view? Is there still hope or not in terms of TNB and other utilities turning around? Is there still hope? Yeah.
I think the government must have some sort of reserve card still in play, right? So because in case this MCO period or the COVID phase actually takes a much longer than anticipated time. So now 14th, right? So earlier that mention of going back to EPF, it should have been automatic EPF, postponement. But even if you're going back to the EPF, that announcement is based on the previous idea that we'll all go back to work on the 15th of April. So now we don't go back to work until the 28th of April. So is it that seems to be some sort of a dichotomy between policy announcement and an alignment of implementation? So now what happens to the 14th? So do I go back on the 15th and negotiate with EPF? I can't even go out of my house until the 28th, right? So what happens? So do I become in default automatically? Might as well have given us the automatic EPF deferment. That would have been a much easier thing to do.
Right. So now we're not comfortable with the baby steps that we are taking, right?
So that's the thing, right? So because, for example, right, so 3 days ago until now, right, so I can say everybody's hair is quite unkept, because I'm sure even until today nobody has gone for a haircut even today, simply because of all the industries that we opened up. I mean, I have nothing against anybody who's a hairstylist or a hair salon, but is there enough data to show why hairstylists or hair salons should be opened and disregards another 66 different subsectors? So that decisions seems to be not so much in sync with what the market wants. So I believe government must come up with more of a market-friendly, market-reactive question, right? So another thing, Bruce, right? And say everybody is association head, Dr. Michael, Dr. Gary, and yourself also, right? So we all come from association background.
They thought that, they've been scanning social media and everyone seems to be saying they need a haircut. So probably that would be, I would say, a proactive measure on their part.
So, the idea of MITI has been asking for feedback from industries and says which industries need to, be back essential or not. If you say even support services, for example, food will be a very important support service for all industries. Whenever you open up, the guys working and not working have to eat. So would that justify opening up all the food centers or the food courts, or at least the B40 places which people go to? So that alignment must happen. So I still think there is a lot of hope in terms of the government, but I think the role of the institutions like chambers, associations, like MRCA, SMI, SME Association, all these have actually come into very important play now. Because if not for the associations, there is no chance in hell that Putrajaya would have actually done what they did. So even the automatic moratorium, don't forget the moratorium was not announced by Tan Sri Muhyiddin. Now, it was actually announced by Tun Mahathir on the 27th of February. It only became automatic at the Prihatin one, simply because everybody, all of us, went back to the government and said, you have to give it automatic. Otherwise, the bank is going to be selective. Only when Bank Negara says automatic and must be compiled, only then the banks play a role. Otherwise, they would have been selective and given it to Dato Sri Michael and not given it to me. And that would have been very unfair to the market, you see. So I think there is hope. But I think that continuous feedback must happen, continues to happen, even when we go post MCO period.
Yeah, but I think there is a fair amount of acceptance that the moratorium is a welcome breather, right?
Oh, yes.
The thing that is a bone of contention right now is the availability of the loans which are not given out fast enough, with low enough interest rate, or for duration that's long enough, and so on. We can continuously debate. But given the circumstance today, you as a business owner, an entrepreneur, what do you do? Should you take up the moratorium? I would think yes. If you need the cash flow, but what kind of loans are available and which are suitable for you? For example, we have the announcement of the Special Relief Fund, and we have got the AES as well. Can you give us an idea, perhaps Dato ATK, since you talked about the banks?
So I think, right,
how are these better An improvement, yeah.
Sure. SRF is now the most used three-letter word now, right? So from the time it was earlier 2 billion, then became 5 billion,
Yeah.
but it's still
Interest
limited
rate
to.
drop also from 3.75 to 3.5. So you got to give it to them. Yeah.
But don't forget, so when we say $1 million cap on each, so we're talking about maximum about 5,000 companies at the lower end, and maybe even if you say each company is only given $500,000 on average, the numbers go 7.5, or maybe 8,000-9,000. So you look at the number of companies that are really going to benefit, number of SMEs, there should going to be very small coverage of the 1 million SMEs that exist. So SRF alone is not enough, but SRF was not meant to finance medium-term stuff. SRF was meant to finance April month needs for SMEs. That is why they announced it so long back. But by the month of April, we don't even have 2,000 applications which have been approved. So it actually defeats the whole purpose. So whether you go to AEA, all economic sectors, or whether we go to SRF, or even if you're talking about the bigger players, you would go to that Dana Jamin funds. If the drawdown doesn't happen now, if disbursement doesn't happen now, actually it defeats the whole purpose, because once nasi sudah jadi bubur, there is no reason of whether the money comes in or not, because the entity may not even exist. It's like, you can't celebrate the death, right? So the patient is in ICU, you must have enough resources to bring the patient out of ICU, not go to the postmortem, because by then things are already done and cooked up already. So that's, I think, the approach that institutions must take.
And if we look at the SRF and all that, there is a cap on the amount that you can borrow. So,
1 million.
Yeah. So, Dato Sri Gary, what about the larger companies or the mid-tier companies? Where do they turn to? What's in store for them? Because you have to agree that the bigger companies, somehow they are part of the ecosystem. They manufacture, right? They manufacture items that are sold at retail. So they are all part of this interdependent ecosystem. Over to you, that's Sri Gary.
Well, I'm sure they may also try to apply for the whether they qualify or not. Probably they'll talk to their banks to restructure whatever loans they have, or maybe get some additional facilities. You look back very interestingly, the last recession during 1998-99, talk about Sunway, you see. Tan Sri Jeffrey Chia was very open about it. All the banks actually withdraw all his loans, except HSBC. And that time, not only they restructure and give him some additional even facility, and that helped him to tie through for him to restructure the other properties in the business. I think that's very important. That's why the bank has to be far-sighted, not be fair weather friends. Most of them are fair weather friends. So very important, they have to help the business sector. They must take it as a partnership and not take it as one-way street. It's a big partnership. You help me today, tomorrow you look at Sunway, today they are so big. You see, those who help Sunway, of course, they will benefit the most. You see, I'm sure Tan Sri Jeffrey, being a grateful person, he would of course support back whoever has helped him before. Right? So I think this is very important. I heard even the Tai Long are not lending because of the bad times. You see, I just heard something from the grapevine, So it's very difficult for people to get loans now. So unless the bank comes in, the restructure, and the SMEs get the soft loans, but it has to be quick and fast. Like just now, Dato' ATK was saying, you come too late, the fish already dead already. Whatever oxygen you give is no point. And Dato' Michael Kang also mentioned, the intention of the government is good, but I think the sense of urgency is not there. For whatever reasons, probably has not been filtered through down to the people, or the intention, as I said, is good, but how this is implemented. And today we're talking about crisis, something very, very extraordinary, and this would need and require very unprecedented actions, not normal fiscal policies alone. It has to be the support of all the entire business and business ecosystem in the entire economy, from the government statutories to the banks, to Bank Negara directing the right way, to the staff have to compromise, suppliers have to restructure their the payment as well. and all areas. And then landlords has to be more benign and more compromising. You know, many of them have done it. I think that's good. I think that should be the spirit to stay afloat and move on. You see, and you look at very interestingly, you look at the Spanish flu of 1918 to 1920. Yeah, it affected worldwide. 50 million people died. It took them almost 3 years for the whole world to go back to normalcy. Do you think Malaysia? I think a lot of people still having the dreams that, oh, you'll recover once you open after the MCO. I can guarantee you, then for the next 6 months, you probably just stabilize it. You take probably another 6 months easy to go back to normalcy. The good thing about Malaysia, we have a lot of dynamic and very entrepreneurial people in Malaysia. But they need a lot of support from the ecosystem, from the government, especially the banks. So if these are all put in place, I'm very, very sure we will sail through. And the biggest challenge today about this COVID-19 is that it's so different from any other situation. It's now not talking about petroleum prices has gone down so low. At one time it was 20 ringgit, 20 USD. Now it's about 31 or something like that. Lucky it bounced back. So you can see here probably Petronas can only give back to the government maybe 30 billion in the coffers this year, or even 25 to 30 billion compared to 80 billion. And what about exports? Will be short-changed again, right? There's literally no FDIs, right? And Malaysia, we depends a lot on commodities. Again, another big one. So with all this, ultimately, there's very little disposable income to the people, you see. The consumption in the whole entire GDP will be very low, is it? Definitely, according to the IMF also, they just mentioned the last 3 months, they talk about positive per capita. And now after 3 months, they're talking about deficit in the rate, is it? In the rate zone. Can you imagine? It's so serious a matter. IMF itself already sent this very strong signal. So the government and everyone have to take heed and really put attention that this is a
crisis
very, very
is
serious.
Not like a financial crisis,
Yes.
like the subprime that we saw 10 years ago or 11 years ago. This one involves health and it affects everyone. And Dato Sri Gary, you are right. You mentioned it's during this time, we need to engage with everyone. We have already seen the supply side, and the policy and the government. So you've got your banks, you have got your landlords, you have got your other suppliers. And you mentioned something very critical as well. Another stakeholder is our people, the employees, our staff. So let's go back to the microeconomic point from the perspective of a business person, Dato Michael. What should we do with our employees right now, given a cash-strapped situation? Business, we don't get revenue, or revenue is substantially affected negatively. What should we tell the staff? What should we do? With this stuff. We have got two initiatives that was given by Perkeso, right? It's on what do you call it? One is to retain staff for 6 months and they'll pay you between 600 to 1,200. And the other one, if you were to retrench them, then they'll get 600 ringgit. How do we go about this? What's the strategy behind it? If you are a business person, how do you approach that with staff? I think it has to be collective. You did mention to me, it has to be part government subsidy, part employer, and even part employee. But how do we implement this? Dato Michael.
I think implementation also have to depend on individual company financial strength. The individual company internal structures. They have to definitely have to sit down and discuss and talk to their staff. To how to come together and to share the burden to overcome this crisis. I think this crisis is not financial crisis like previous 97 or 85 or even 08. I think a bit, totally different. This is the totally lockdown. This is because of COVID-19 and this is worldwide issue. It's not only in Malaysia. I think it's a lot of areas. That's why we can see that the employee government already helping the employee on the subsidy as well. Those who earn below 4,000, government also giving them 1,600. And those earning more than 4,000 to 8,000, government also offering another 1,000 ringgit for them to overcome their financial problem. Then at the same time, you can see the bank also agreed moratorium to defer whatever their loan with the bank, include their property or their car loan, whatever. They agreed to postpone for 6 months moratorium, so that for the employee, I think for their burdens a bit not that heavy anymore, not like industry or not like the employer. Employers, they have other things to take care, then they have to rentals, all this have to take care. But the employee, this is only the most important. They have to discuss and calculate, those how much cash they have, whatever subsidy from the government, and also what is the figures, the employer able to pay to detain them, continue with their job. That's the most important, to make sure the company able to sail through this crisis. If this company shut down, I think nothing benefit anybody. I think employee all are loser. If you don't come together and discuss about how to share the burden together with the company. I think the other way, another way the employer can do is those who employee willing to certify or take less pay, or pay cut, or even take unpaid leave, whatever. Whether is that possible that company can agree that when the company come back into normal, making the profit, then the company can offer them some extra bonus or extra pay, to overcome whatever their shortfall during this crisis. Another solution, which is I heard some of the employer doing the way is, since they are the company, this is a good company, but to overcome this crisis, maybe like retailer, they have 10 outlet, maybe certain outlet, the owner, the shop, the employee, the senior employee can offer some share, by also at the same time to reduce the cut pay. When the his manager can become a partner of the company. I think this is another way of to overcome the crisis. At least the employer and employee can survive during this COVID-19.
Right. Dato' ATK, you seem to be busy with your equipment.
No, yeah, I'm getting in charge.
Did you hear what Dato' Michael said just now?
Yes.
All right. So Dato' Michael proposed a few things, 3 matters in terms of engaging with the employees. And I'm sure most employers are already, if not has already talked to the employees, because we are already, almost 2 weeks into the month of April already. In reality, how is that turning out, in terms of this discussion with employees? Because I had conversation with another group of MRCA Southern Chapter, and we had this conversation last night. And it seems to be more challenging. There's more than meets the eye when we are dealing with different employees. Certain employees, they understand, the need for everyone to come together. So in terms of implementation, in terms of the talks, how has it been from your end? When you talk to employees, what were their feedback? What were their, any backlash or any positive responses?
So I think, right, so I think some of the discussions we have had from beginning, right, so I think the word that Dr. Gary Chua also used is the goodwill. The goodwill is not only with our business partners and our vendors and everybody else that we need to pay or buy from, right? It's also our internal stakeholders, which is our staff. And they actually occupy like 30-35% of my expenses every month. So I think as long as we are very open to them, majority of them understand, because we also put it back to them and says, look, when the moratorium exists, whether it is your housing loan, car loan, commitments that you have as a person in this country in terms of your financial obligations, all of them have been postponed for at least 6 months. So what you need to do now in the MCO period or even the immediate post-MCO period is to put food on the table. So if you need to put food on the table, what I can afford to pay you is, say, for example, right? So I've come to negotiation with all of my staff and says, look, I pay you a third. I pay you a third, which is good enough to actually put food on the table and sustain. But whatever that is balanced, the deferrals, we pay over period of time after the MCO period, a large majority of them will understand because that goodwill that we have built. Now, if you don't think, it's like the chicken and egg story, right? So if I don't survive, even if you want to be there, the job markets are not like open to everybody. So if you're out of a job, nobody's going to employ you anyway. So if I close down, there is no chance in hell that you will get a job the next month. So I think a lot of employees
they hear you and they are agreeable to it, Dato' ATK.
Most of them are agreeable. Most of them are agreeable because I think we must also instill the idea of we are in it together. This is not an employee versus employer issue, right? So it's not a supply-demand mismatch. It is purely everybody. The whole market is transformed. So I think
I want to hear the views of Dato' Sri Gary, because you have got very good EQ, you know, and in terms of staff engagement, what is your view, you know, from your F&B operations when you speak to staff?
Not surprisingly, many of the staff actually they compromise because knowing the fact that during good times, bad times, many of them also sometimes they take company loans despite their less than even 1 year service. The company has never looked back not supporting them, you see. So we always supported them. So many of them in a way like reciprocating, you see. So we do not see so much of a problem in that sense. We
don't have with taking a pay cut or even deferring some of their income, or
even pay cut. We have a few who have volunteered the higher grade staff. They have even. I mean, the good thing is that we have some kind of understanding. Of course, when the market picks up, should we do well again? Go back to normalcy. Just towards the end of the year or Chinese New Year, we give back the bonus, you see, or ex gratia. Yeah. So as I said, many things in life is always about goodwill. If we can do that, I think a lot of things also can be resolved. So very importantly, the employee also have to feel that way. See? They must love the company. Otherwise, the company also cannot love them. Is it right? I think it's
that brings us to the question: the person who loves the company should also be the person that owns the company. Have you, as an employer, come forward and even taken a pay cut or even taking no pay?
Now, at least, I mean, normally you talk about, let's say you have a sort of cash flow situation. You don't even talk about taking a pay home, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah, the first thing you have to look after the staff first, make sure they have enough. Just for information, we also send food to some of our, we are doing two sides of the business, some building services business, and also besides that, we have restaurants. So we also send some food to some of the staff who are actually in need of it. Some are foreigners, some are locals. So it's good that we support them in that way. So we always tell them, should you run short of food, we would not hesitate to send it to you. I think that's very important to make sure they have the kind of assurance. As that's how Dato' ATK said, you must have food on the table.
Okay, so that brings us nicely to our almost final point. We are always talking about deferring payment here, cutting and all that. What about getting new customers? Where to find new sources of revenue? Last week on Friday, our Prime Minister, he mentioned we are now approaching, it's no longer about crisis also. We should also prepare ourselves for the post-COVID pandemic. What happens when we come out of the, movement control order? He mentioned this word, a new normal, right? So I suspect the MCO would have affected consumer or customer behavior. So how has businesses, who have had, we have a lot of time during this MCO to retool, pivot the business. So how are we preparing ourselves for this new normal when it comes to, running business, getting customers? Dato' Michael? Dato' Michael, your audio.
Okay, I think it's very important, like what you have mentioned there. The consumer behavior definitely changed because for the next 6 months after the COVID-19, post-COVID, I think consumer will not go like a usual shopping, you know, or retail. I think retail will be badly affected. The others, I think the SME should sit down now, or not only stay at home now, but to think about what kind of mechanism, because when customer behavior change, I think business model definitely will be changed.
Right. How has customer behavior changed?
Yes, customer behavior change. They consume, the way they consume, they buy good or whatever, they consume thing. Definitely the way they change. You know, they will definitely go online. A lot of people now stay at home, are buying anything, consume their products online now. Even include the hair salon. I think you like hair salon, they can now using the online, embark into the digital online, communicate with the customer, or teach them how to do their facial whatever at home, or sell their product, you know, to get the people, their customer to use, how to use their hair salon, you know, the facial products or whatever, you know, or can do booking online, arrange the scheduling for the customer, their customer to go back to salon by like what they call social distancing, you know, by hours, you know, and then how to clean up, you know, the salon, and then make it more hygiene wherever that when the customer come in, you know, all these will be changed, you know. So I think a lot of SME, you know, should find a way, you know, to embark into the digitals, as government already budget last year, for this year budget, they already give 500 million budget on the digitization or modernization, or even on the SME. You know, each company can entitle for 5,000 ringgit grant. I think we also put in the proposal for the post-COVID. You know, we hope the government can seriously look into it, you know, to increase the numbers of SME to embark into digitals, increase the grant, you know, from 5,000 to 10,000, or from 100,000 beneficiary originally, if possible, to increase to 300,000, so that all the SME can really move into the digital or on electronics way to run their business. I think this is the most important for SME to make a change.
Okay, we have a great opportunity with Dato Sri Gary here. You know, you own and run the Chakri Group. You know, we've got Sano and your F&B. How has this COVID-19 changed the way you run your business on the F&B side, you know, in terms of customer behavior? Perhaps you can give us your own personal account.
For F&B, the government so far only allowed those takeaways and takeaways and deliveries. So that's why Grab and Foodpanda, I was told, they're doing up to 10 times deliveries, you know, compared to normal days. But for the restaurant side, many did not score very well in the sense of takeaways and deliveries, because there's some adverse publicity about the deliveries by us. What you call it? The delivery people, the hygiene, is it? So that is also one issue. That's why. But for those fast food and those burgers, I can observe that they're still doing pretty well, is it? So that is one area. For us, I think there's not too much of a business in that sense. Probably 5 to 10% the most. I think
we have shared with prepared for the life, you know, after the MCO, where we could still go out. All right, I've been studying China. They have got a head start experience from us for 3 months. They have lifted their lockdowns. People are coming out, but they are still a bit cautious, a bit wary, a bit fearful. So what are you doing, you know, in terms of preparation for, you know, the post-MCO period, Dato Sri Gary, when people start coming back, trickling into your outlets?
You see, hygiene will be the top priority, you see, probably, definitely we have to sanitize all the outlets. And then we have to put sanitizers at the front door and stand by some masks just in case needed. And also, it's important that we should have records of each of the customer. Like in China, what they do, they even have a QR code of each of the customer, the registration of the customer. So we have more stringent SOPs, and then of course distancing of the sittings. You see, let's say you have 200 seater, you can't put 200 now. Probably you may have only 120 or so, or 60%. You know, so you have more distancing. I think that will be a more sort of practical arrangement for the time being. You know, and look at China. Even after 3 months, even in public areas like even the malls and all this, only about 40 or less than 50% of the people are going out, you see. So people are still very cautious. Those who have been infected, probably they try to avoid. And those who have not been infected, they also probably avoid not to go out just in case there's a second round, you see, of infection going on. So there definitely the changes in attitude in terms of hygiene and all these have to be put in place very strictly. And we also have, in fact, even before the MCO, we also have scanners at our outlets, you see. Those who have certain temperature above, say, 37.8 or something like that, we will not allow them to come in. You see? So it's important. These are some of the elements as a checkpoint to make sure whoever dine in the restaurant, at least of certain of health status, you see, and also precaution. Make sure our staff as well. We have to check all our staff. Make sure they do not have any of such what you call it, symptoms, you know, and test all of them.
Any food traceability where you get your sources, which staff handle which food at which stage, you know, in the delivery?
We have our central purchase unit where we control all the food supplies, you see. So they screen through the quality of it. If it's not up to standard, we have to send it back, you know. Right. So like some of the special sauces is also made there. So centralize it to make it standardized, so the quality will be quite consistent in that way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sri Gary. Dato ATK, a few more things, you know. So Dato Michael talked about digitalization, about, you know, using robots to replace humans and autonomous vehicles and so on. Dr. Sri Gary spoke about the hygiene aspect of it, but there's also the global trade as well, that we are all sort of tied to this grid. China is recovering. Malaysia, fortunately, I think we are seeing some sort of a flattening of the curve, but elsewhere in the globe, things are still exploding. So can you give us an insight, you know, in terms of international trade, international travel, in terms of hospitality and all that? How is it still going to sort of affect business in Malaysia? And how is that going to be a new normal for us operating? You know, some of us get supplies from overseas and things like that. And I would like to add another point as well. There seems to be a explosion of work from home. We find that it's possible to hold meetings using devices such as Zoom, Hangouts, and so on. What are your views, you know, in terms of communication with your people, with your partners, and, you know, and this disruption to global travel communication?
So that's the thing, right? So Bruce, I think many people have mentioned it already. You see, this whole COVID experience and MCO has more or less accelerated digital disruption that was taking place already at a very fast pace. But it is not actually, and I think many companies, especially the SMEs, right? So you don't leave out the big players, but even Malaysian SMEs have come to realize it is not the technology. The technology is very much accessible and kind of affordable, right? But the problem is, it is the back-end processes that we don't map out, whether it is the food and beverage, or whether it is production companies, or whether we are actually services. We were not prepared with the back-end processes. When we say work from home, like, I'm not sure what work I can do at home. I know I'm ready to work, but how do you get your staff to work from home? Do you have a monitoring system? Do you have a sharing system? Do you have, you know, Monday.com kind of stuff working for you? You don't, because our processes are never aligned to work from home. Yes, you have internet facility, but that's about it. So I think that reimagination of work as it stands is not going to be a transient thing. It is not post-COVID, or it's just not immediate COVID. It is really going to be permanent as we move forward. So a lot of reimagination of the business models would probably start happening across industries, from food and beverage to retail to services and how we consume. And that realignment is now actually, I mean, I was discussing with a friend, you know, we are familiar with green economy, we are familiar with blue economy, we are very familiar with circular economy, with Food Panda, Grab, and everybody else. Now, actually, we should start familiarizing ourselves with isolation economy, because this isolation economy is what is going to be kind of a medium term for us. So people are not really going to fly. If you have AirAsia and Mars flying after this, I'm not sure what's happening on that ground. I think everybody has been sent. But even if AirAsia and Mars is flying, I don't think anybody is booking tickets at this point in time. So that multiplier effect would be there. and how we go out to acquire new clients, right? We spoke about whether there's new business trajectories that are happening. So acquisition of new clients and new services and new business itself is going to change. Those people who've been fast to social media, those who've been fast to the digital divide, would actually stand a much bigger chance than companies which have been stuck in the past. So that disruption has already happened. And I think unless we reimagine, and one more important thing, I think somebody in Putrajaya was ever listening to us, I think the regulatory and legislative changes must happen to facilitate this. They cannot be again still stuck in, the Stone Age regulations to say, look, this is how we have been operating. But the new norm, as Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister has actually said, the new norm will set a new level of business. And that new level of business must be complemented and compensated by the legislation regulatory changes. Because if regulation and legislation doesn't take place, there's no point you come up with new business models, because the regulators will throw the book at you and say, oh, you, based on my general order, you actually cannot be doing this. But if I don't do this, I have to close shop. So that has to come on a faster and complement the work that the SMEs are doing. I think if that happens, I think we have a faster way of reconnecting to global trade. The other thing is every day we are not coming back into the global market, somebody else is actually replacing our place, right? So whether Singapore, Taiwan, or China, or anybody else, or Vietnam and our neighbors actually starting to fill up that space. So we will start losing out if we're not back to market fast. So I hope the one curve that we don't want to flatten is the recovery curve, so that V-shaped recovery is what actually we are looking out for.
Right. So as we are recovering, Dato' Michael, your volume.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dato' ATK talked about recovery, positive note. So what are the silver linings? Where are the opportunities? They said sometimes certain businesses might become unicorns, might make it big because of COVID. So where are the areas of opportunities you see, under this new normal?
I think it's a lot of areas like this new normal you can see. You can refer back to what China have been doing. I think a lot of areas we can be the unicorn, especially when it comes to the essential supply, essential service industry. We should be able to build our own ecosystem in the country, like especially medical device supply. We have all the technology, but we did not manufacturing it. Certain part we are rely on import. If we able to government can come in and assist, to build the ecosystem. I think the industry also can chip in to help. I think this is the future trend. Especially for the healthcare industry.
Ecosystem.
Ecosystem.
You need a lot of innovation. Right?
I think innovation we should have. We have the people, we have the brand, we have the brain drain, we have all people here, we have good engineers, we have good manufacturers. Even today we talk about face mask, all the raw material we can produce locally. But we choose to import some important part from China. So when China locked down or other countries locked down, we are unable to continue to produce our face mask because of the whole supply chain was shut down. So I think it's a lot of area we can do. Like we talk about delivery, like just Sri Gary mentioned. Grab was increased 10 times. As a normal delivery. I think the whole logistic industry, for the ecosystem of the logistic industry in the country, I think is the best investment now. I think you had to build up because the consumer behavior change. They will definitely order online, the consume online, whatever, they are for next 6 months, even a year. And when they already do it, I don't think they're going to change, to buy this food or whatever necessity, they can go to the shop anymore. They will definitely order online. I think all this communication, like even today now we are doing the online meeting. All this we can do it online. Everything can be the digitals. If that is why like IT industry will be booming. This industry develop all the equipment. I think every household will definitely equip with these online equipment. So this will be boom. Every house, because they will set up work at home or education or study at home. I think this is the trend is moving. All these are business opportunity now.
Right. So in order for these business opportunities to boom, there needs to be innovation, right?
Yes.
There needs to be innovation. And we didn't really talk much, we talked about SMEs, the micros and so on, but there's also a segment known as the startups, right? And we don't hear startups being mentioned anywhere, in the stimulus package. So what's your view, Dato' ATK? I think MDEC came up with something. They say, okay, let the banks do what the banks are doing, but the banks are obviously not gonna fund the startups because they don't have the history, or the maturity to have access to those loans. So they have introduced a lot of ECF, equity crowdfunding, peer-to-peer kind of a funding. What is your take of that? Is there enough being done, to harness and grow these startups? Because they feel the pandemic as well.
Yeah, I think there was just not enough work being done on that grounds even before the COVID exists, right? So let's be fair that a lot of changes that are going to take place in the startup ecosystem is not primarily because of COVID driven. But I think the COVID, MCO, and the new normal as we speak has actually brought about a need to have a very vibrant and a resilient startup community, which is well supported with financing, either alternative financing like peer-to-peer, ECF, or what other means. But I think government must play a pivotal role in this because startup, as it is high risk, but they have also very high success rate. So these gaps that have been established that we know, for example, even in the circular economy, right? So it is the Grabs of the world that are actually taking up a lot of the businesses. What happened to the homegrown players like Bigo, for example? I don't hear of Bigo. It came about, early part of the year, but now they have taken a natural death because I don't hear of them. So this gap has not been filled in. And if you don't build homegrown champions, and I think we're really going to lose out in the long term or even the medium term, where we already have lost out, because if these startups are not nurtured, and for that nurturing, government has to provide the base case. If the government provides the base case, then they will be able to leapfrog. Unfortunately, whether it is MAGIC or MDEC, they are basically doing a lot of stopgap, reactive, knee-jerk kind of reactions and not forward-looking things. I hope at least once the COVID issues are settled, somebody will start looking at and says, look, okay, maybe we got it wrong the first time, but at least the second chance, so the second innings would be a much better innings for the startup community.
Right. Now, we have already gone almost an hour and 20 minutes, so we got to come to a close right now. One thing I hear, we talked about a new normal. We are already experiencing the new normal from our homes. And I think post-MCO, as we get out, things will not be business as usual. But at the same time, I hear that our policymakers, right? I mean, our suppliers, our staff, our customers, everyone is changing. They're pivoting. But one thing I hear that's not changing fast enough would be the policy makers. That's because laws are inherently not easy to make and they take some time. Do you think we need a sort of post-COVID-19 legislature, that just sort of resets the economy? We don't take much of what we have inherited previously. We need new laws to tackle this new experience, this new normal that we're experiencing now. And if the answer is yes, which are the areas that we should look at? Dato' Sri Gary, welcome back. I would like to hear your views on this.
I think for the country to move forward, it's just like during the World War II, after World War II, most of the country took a special bond. I think. So like in this case, could be a COVID bond, probably for 50 years or so. And this is important because the economy needs money, needs a cash flow to pump in money, pump in activities for the whole economy. I think that's probably, if you go for a sort of budget deficit, probably you can't do very much. Probably a bond will suffice in this case, because this is something very unprecedented. We have no choice but to take a bond. And with the dwindling revenue from Petronas, you can't do very much, and also commodities, there's little FDIs and exports are going down, So these are very important things I think the government has to do. Of course, we also have to get prepared ourselves, like to encourage more digitalization. Like I think we should, the country, the government has been previously promoting aggressively to have, say, 20% of the GDP on digital alone, you see. I think this is one of the very important areas as well. And what you call that, the whole ecosystem probably has to be revamped in a sense that to make it more business friendly. You know, even the banking system, I think the banking system are too traditional. Probably we need to look at it in a more dynamic manner. So we leave it that to Bank Negara to stimulate growth, not just talking about now covering the holes, you see. We have to, how to stimulate, when we talk about stimulus, how to stimulate the economy to really go to the next level and do a quick recovery. As I mentioned just now, like during the Spanish flu, it took almost 3 years or more for the whole world to come back to normalcy. So if let's say we want to achieve it within a year or so, something drastic have to be done, you see. Even the FDIs, we have to do very aggressively. I think Thailand has done something like that. For example, you invest within this year, we give you tax breaks totally tax-free for next 5 years. Example, it's up to say 50 million, but have to be invested this year. These are things that also will be more friendly to the foreigners and to help to get spur FDIs. And of course, exports, we have to be very friendly to all the countries of the world, especially like palm oil. We have to try to export more to India, China, and Europe, and of course, as many countries as possible. These are important elements. Besides that, of course, policies like hygiene to put in place to make sure this would not be another big round of what you call it, exponential growth in the future for this kind of diseases. And I'm sure there are many other things the government have to look at. We on our part as the NGOs and the association, of course, we are more than happy to contribute to the government's for the betterment of the people and to make sure Malaysia will stay on top of all these situations. But now currently the biggest challenge is cash flow. So every sector, every party have to really come in to feel the sense of urgency that Dr. Michael was saying. Just feel the sense of urgency. There's no more time to queue up, you see. It's now is the bang thing, you see. You have to go for it and make sure everything is in order and implemented the smoothest, fast and easy, fastest way possible to help one another.
Thank you very much for your insight and foresight, Dr. Sri Gary. Now, Dr. Michael, I don't think you are still stopping. You are still providing interviews and sharing, and your engagement will still be continuous. Do you think we need new laws? Or do we think we just need to take baby steps and set up more committees? What are your views? You know,
I think we do not need to set up more committee. I think the government should take immediate action, you know, to come out the more business friendly policy, or even the whole mechanism is really there. You know, we should not do like the old way of doing the government way of managing the business community. I think we need the government must but dare to do it, must bold and aggressive proposal, you know, aggressive policy to encourage the industry to move forward. I think this is very important. Like I would get to say that like Bank Negara should change the whole banking ecosystem. You know, we should no longer stay at the old way of doing the bank system. You know, we can everything, like even this time COVID, they were locked down, everything we can go online. You know, application alone, processing alone, even disbursement also can go online. Why we still need to wait until, you know, the after COVID, then the lawyer come back word and only able to start process the loan agreement? I think this is ridiculous. You know, then also the drawdown of the government's assistance. I think all this should be able to remove all the barrel and let the business immediate to enjoy to get the cash in. You know, what we need is immediate cash. After that, I think what we need is a good policy, a friendly policy. Yes, government always say they're not enough money, fine. But what business industry want is policy. It's attractive policy. I think the industry know what to do. Immediate can move with the good policy. Government should not, you know, even government not coming in any assistance. I think what we want is the policy. Release all the the roadblock, set all the unnecessary criteria, remove all the criteria, remove all the terms and conditions, let the industry operate, make it, like income tax, you can just, okay, fine, wherever invest from now on, after COVID, for next 2 years, you enjoy the exempted from the tax as long as you are running the business. All these are spur the economy, how to stimulate the economy. And those who continue to invest for the next 5 years, wherever you are invest in certain industry, then you can enjoy 5 years finance status. All these are policy to attract the boom the economy. I think we have to, government must dare to do it, must bold to do it, to make sure our economy are moving and create more job for the local.
How are you going to make the government more bold, more daring, make decision faster? Are you still engaging them?
Yes, definitely. I'm still engaging them.
Other than appearing in shows like this, yeah. Right. I think Dr. Michael, your mic is off. So
sorry. I think I don't know why.
Okay. From your end, but right, sorry. And we hope that this sort of cascades upwards to people that can make the decisions. Right. So these are really, really pressing needs. We need to do things fast. We need to do it now, and we need to take the bulls by the horns. Right. But we need, Dato' ATK, you mentioned something like we need legislature. But we know legislature take time. Parliament is not scheduled to meet until May, right? And then they need time to debate the bills and come up with select committee before it really becomes law. So very, very quickly, what do you hope to see, in this new law, if there is one?
See, that's the thing, right? So I like I mentioned just now, this legislative sandbox or the regulatory sandbox that we're going to go in is something that happens in the medium term. But I think the immediate post-COVID phase, government should actually come up with a private sector-driven recovery. So it should be a public-private partnership where the private sector sits in and says, look, this is what we can do. Let's do it together. Because if government makes a decision, look, we know best. I think the days of government knows best is over as far as business is concerned. If the private sector is the one who's going to drive the economy, whether it is export market, whether it's bringing back domestic consumption, whether it is ensuring supply chain works, or whether it's ensuring that the resilience of the companies and making sure jobs are created and at least kept, this is the private sector's concern. If the private sector is not going to play an active role, is Putrajaya going to make all decisions, then actually there is no go. So that post-COVID phase must be a public-private partnership recovery. So that task force must be
joined. You mentioning that they are engaging you. Is that happening right now?
Okay, I think private and public partnership, I think, must lead by the private, not by the public.
Yeah. All right. I mean, but generally we give difference to the governments of public-private, but then private sector-driven.
Right. So
has to be.
We hope that either one or if not the three of you gets to be in that decision-making body. Dato' Sri Gary, you wanted to say something?
One more area is besides the foreign direct investment and local reinvestments to drive the economy. I think one area which the government also has been driving at is tourism, which is a big contributor of the GDPs and economy of Malaysia. And this area now is so badly affected. It's literally zero now in terms of business. Look at all the airlines; they just collapse overnight, and it probably take a trillion to build them up. You see, and this is something I think that the government can capitalize on. Do very aggressive, since we have already cancelled the 2020 Visit Malaysia year. We should come up with a new one immediately to drive the economy, because tourism has very immediate impact and multiplier effect on a lot of areas, from transportation to hotels to entertainment to F&Bs, shoppings. Shopping, they spend easily more than a third, and Malaysia is one of the shopping paradise of the world. You see, so the government must, together with the private sector, give a very aggressive drive. Maybe perhaps like package deal. For the hotels and the flight, can team up with AirAsia or Malaysian Airlines. Do a very aggressive campaign. I'm sure this will also quickly drive back and bring the economy back to life. I think this is another area the government should also spend money and focus on it.
Thank you very much. And I think one thing that rings out loud in our conversation this evening is that this crisis has hit everyone. You know, the government, they are also struggling to get a foothold and an understanding of what's happening. The business community, especially, you know, from the upline and downline suppliers to the employees and the people and the customers, everyone is disrupted in a sense. But the way out of it for our survival, our recovery, is that we need to have a partnership, not only with the government, but with the employees, with your suppliers, with the banks, and so on. Before we end, I just want you to answer two questions. When, I mean, we are experiencing a new normal, or when do you see an economic sort of turnaround for us? Everything is contractionary now, but when do you see the turnaround and the eventual bounce back? We need to end with something positive. And secondly, what's your advice to anyone out there? Could be a government, could be your people, could be a business community out there. Just give one piece of advice, and let's start with Dato' Michael Kang.
I think let us work hand on hand, whether private or government or peoples in the country should come together and fight for our own economy. You know, government should listen to the people, see how we can work together and develop the economy to recovery as fast as possible.
Thank you, Dato' Michael. Dato' ATK?
I think whether it's the people or companies, I think we have also come to the idea of less is more. So with the idea of using less is more with limited resources that will be available to us, with 2020 being a forgotten year as far as growth is concerned. So we're only looking at some sort of a hope in 2021. With that, as long as we are in it as a nation, both government, people, and the private and public sector, I think we'll be able to get through this in a very good manner.
2021, I like that. So Dato' Sri Gary, you mentioned Spanish flu took 3 years. Are you more positive than that? What are your views?
Yes, as I mentioned, if let's say the government would take an aggressive approach, and I believe we will sail through faster. I think this whole exercise in terms of the COVID, pandemic worldwide, I think taught us a lot of things. You see, first of all, I think we have to be grateful, gratitude. Even simple thing like freedom. You see, now we are all locked in the house. You know, you get what I mean? So we are also living in a multiracial country. So peace and freedom is so important. You see? So we mustn't take that for granted. And of course, there's also, you look at both sides of the divide, the Americans and the Chinese way, the China. Americans are, you can see, they're quite arrogant in the sense of they keep having a self-denial approach, and quite selfishly, they're also trying to hijack supplies for other countries. The opposite side, you look at how China does things, look at they're using a lot of diplomacy, helping out other countries. And these also will apply exactly in our business system, you see. To be humble, to have humility, to help one another, to have kindness, you see. So I think even business people in every sector should also practice this, to help others, to have compassion. I think, and goodwill, you see, like just what I mentioned. So we need a lot of support from each other, you see. And you look at this whole exercise, we have to be good to each other, mankind, and also nature, you see. This perhaps, as I mentioned earlier, it could be a spiritual calling, you see, for all of us to be kind to each other, not only to as humans, but also to nature. And after this exercise, you can see probably China will lead in terms of the world stage. You know, when you give goodwill to people, you can see that they bounce back in billions. You know, bounce back in many times. You know. Be bountiful. So I think this is also what we should also do, practice in business, not just talking about the world stage, because we are not politicians. So I think this is something we should realize and be grateful and learn, take it as a very bitter lesson. So all of us, we can move on in life in a better way to help each other, one another, so that we have a peaceful and also a very prosperous life for everyone.
Very much, Dato' Sri Gary, Dato' ATK, and Dato' Michael. So, Dato' Sri Gary, those were really, really positive words to end this program. And you're right, karma returns manifold, and if we do it together as a partnership, God willing, we will be able to sail this through and see a rebound faster. And that positive note is how we would like to end this program. And ladies and gentlemen, viewers out there, if you have any more questions, please continue to forward, and we'll get our panelists to reply to you even after this program has ended. And I wish that all of you have learned something, gotten some tip, make yourself a little bit more resilient, make yourself a little bit more aware of what's going on, and we hope that your business survive and sustain and eventually flourish. Wish you all the best. I'm Bruce, and this has been the inaugural post-COVID-19 business survival program organized by Star SME Biz webinar. Thank you very much and good night.